What if your whole life you were very average? Average build, average grades, middle income family, Jewish, but then one day you resolve, I'm going to be an officer in the greatest fighting force on the globe. How many failures will it take to get there? Adam Weiner spent 14 years as a Navy SEAL, reaching the rank of lieutenant commander and leading numerous SEAL teams across the world. But what a ride to get there. He sat with me and discussed the heartbreaking and yet humorous journey to glory. The conversation opens up with me asking him some pre-interview questions, the last of which was about Jessica Buchanan. Jessica became famous when West African warlords captured her and her colleagues during a peace effort, but was rescued by a group of SEALs in the middle of the night in the middle of nowhere. While asking him, he gave me the, no, we're not going to talk about that. To which I asked him, why not? Other SEALs do it.
So the the Hollywood, I mean, ever since Osama bin Laden's raid, there's been more information than should be shared as it relates to specific SEAL teams, and I just like to be conservative on that front and stay away from it in general. I mean, you go into any airport, it seems like they have SEAL Team 6 shirts hanging around. So, you know, I get it. It's out there, but it's kind of like, you know, just because you make a mistake doesn't make it right to, like, double down on it. So I personally just choose to try to stay away from it.
Can you tell us anything about where you might have been?
Yeah, for me personally, yeah. I mean, there's things in my record that are pretty clear, and places that I've served, and it's easy to speak in generalities as it relates to, like, I've spent a lot of time in the Pacific, in the military. They, you know, organize, the globe, in these different geographical boundaries. So the Pacific, you know, Asia Pacific area. When people say the Mideast, I think a lot of people understand what that means, and I spent some time in the Mideast. But most of my tactical time was spent in the Pacific. And then when I was in the latter years of my career, I was going in and out of the Middle East a little bit.
What made you decide that I want to become a Navy SEAL, or at least go into the military?
You're in high school, of course, it's a Jewish family, so where are you going to go to college? And that's, you know, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer. You know, my parents were like, no way, he's not going to be either. Like, we're happy if... That's the challenge. Now I'm a parent. I see it. You know, that poor second child that has to be compared to the older one that does so well. The parents know no better because, you know, there's no manual on parenting. So it's like my older brother was he's very bright, and he was a National Merit finalist. You know, he's devouring Stephen King novels, you know, before he was in middle school. And here I come along, you know, had trouble with reading comprehension. You know, parents are sending me to all these psychologists, whatever, figure out what's wrong. It's like, no, he's normal. He's just not a...
Were they really sending you psychologists? Or?
Yeah, they really were, you know. And I just worked hard, and I did okay. But that was my point. I had to work really hard to do okay. And so when I saw my brother leave for college, he's 4 years older than me, when I was a freshman in high school, I thought, wow, it's a big deal. He's out of the house. It's like a major milestone decision. It's one I'll have to make. What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? What am I even looking for? And at the time, it was really based off of, you know, college athletics, between watching college basketball and college football, trying to determine kind of the culture of what school I wanted to go to. And then I thought, man, that seems a little immature, because you're not going to be on either team. You're just going to be in the stands cheering. So I'm not sure that's the best reason to choose a school. And then I came across the service academies, the Naval Academy, the Air Force Academy, West Point. And when I first saw it, this is back pre-internet, I was in the library. There was no, you know, I was like looking at catalogs, book on University of Virginia. I remember I looked at University of Virginia, and
Those are great schools,
well, yeah, I didn't get in. I didn't get into University of Virginia. Yeah, we can all dream. And then I came across a catalog for the United States Naval Academy. It piqued my interest. I obviously learned more about it and made a decision that, I wanted to do that after a lot of thoughtfulness. Unfortunately, it came to me later after I got excited about it that the standards for admissions were as high as they were. And that's, a blessing. It's funny how God plays things out. So I was so excited that I thought I had found my calling, only to find out after the fact that the odds of me getting in were so low because of the high academic standards for admission there. But I had already kind of set my mind and desire that I wanted it.
Can I just ask, so when you said thoughtfulness, is you just had an image of yourself as being this military, all I can be, finally I can just be the greatest version of myself? Is that what you saw?
Yeah, so the thoughtfulness is, life is complex. Everybody's got a different story. My story is I was very aware of the opportunity to enlist in the armed service. And so that was always on the table for me as an option as it relates to, making one's parents please, depending on who the parent is. One pleases one parent, you go into the other house, they'll ground you for it. And I'll just say that, my parents had their hearts set and worked. Both of my parents worked, and it was just a foregone conclusion that their children were going to go to an undergraduate school. So they didn't like the idea of enlisting. And it was candidly a disagreement between us, but at a primal level, they gave me life, they loved me, they taught me good values, and you feel a sense of, it's not like they're asking me to make the universe spin the other direction on its axis. They're going to pay for me to go, have a good time at a university with my friends. So I was trying to have the best of both worlds because I knew that the service academies were a path to be serving and also earning your undergraduate degree. So, killing two birds with one stone. And so I went for it. I just figured...
Freshman year you made this decision.
Yeah, that's when my brother left. I mean, I committed myself before the end of my freshman year to the notion that I would do everything I could to get in because I believed it to be my purpose. It lined up more so than anything else I had put my mind to. Everything seemed to make sense. I was excited about it, and I also recognized that the likelihood of being accepted was low, but that the loss of going for it didn't hurt me because it was only pushing me to do better in every aspect of my life. And I appreciated that, and I know better now what I didn't know then, which is, success follows desire. So because I desired it so much, it was that natural incentive to push me beyond where I would have otherwise fallen out in any endeavor probably during those teenage years in high school. So I did. I went for it.
Did you say to yourself that, hey, look, if I don't make it, the fringe benefit is fantastic. I mean, I'm going to do very well academically. You're shaking your head, yes. Is that a hindrance? Maybe some people, you have to be all or nothing. Knowing that you have a safety net, perhaps that would hold you back a little bit, or?
So I guess I would just try to compartmentalize that the idea of getting what you want and improving in spaces that you care about are mutually exclusive. And so there was no safety net of not getting what I wanted. It was just the raw disappointment of that reality. But paired with the option of never knowing, having not tried, and having the secondary, I'll say, fringe benefit of making improvements in spaces that I cared about, made a lot of sense that it was worth going for it. And absolutely, those are very clear thoughts I had as a young teenager. I remember very vividly telling myself, there's no way you're getting in, but you're not wrong to go for it, and I bet you'll end up doing better. Because I didn't care. I I don't care that much about any other school, so why would I try that hard in school? I mean, yes, I want to impress my parents, but selfishly speaking, not as much as I wanted to serve in the military. So it all made sense. I mean, like, it was going to help me, because clearly I was going to, if I didn't get into the Naval Academy, I was going to go to some school, whether community college or whatever, I would have gone. Or maybe I would have enlisted. You know, God only knows. But as it happens, it didn't play out that way.
Yeah, okay, we're different in that way, but I don't think I could do that. Anyway, you hunker down. I'm assuming I got to get my grades up. I got to get some tutors. I mean, it only gets harder each year of high school.
That's right. And the SATs, that was like the big thing that held me back, because school. And this is another great lesson that got eked out of this process that I learned as a teenager, is that there are certain things that work ethic can accomplish for you, and other things that there's a more raw reality that, you know, all the desire in the world's not going to get Adam Weiner to be able to dunk a basketball. Lord knows I've tried. I went for it. My grades, I was on it. I should not have been in certain honors classes, and I actually went to the guidance counselor and said, "Hey, can I get into this honors class?" And they said, "Well, I guess you could, but you're really not appropriately fit there." And I said, "Right, but I need it. You know, I'm trying to do this." And they said, "All right, well, you know what? Sure, we'll give you a crack, but we don't want you to fail." So, and I didn't. You know, I'd take the honors class and eke out a B, and that was okay.
That's an A on the GPA. I mean, that's good, right?
I guess. I don't remember how all that math works, but I do recall vividly not accomplishing what I needed on the SATs, that there was like almost a minimum, kind of like it wasn't even the average, it was kind of like the floor average number. And I didn't get it, and then I would retake it and not get it, and retake it and not get it, and I was going to these, you know, prep courses and going through all, it's, you know, everything a high school kid doesn't want to do. And I did it because I was trying to get that score. And I even recall I was in Austin, Texas, away at Boys State, you know, that program that most states have. I think the American Legion puts it on, where you learn about state government. And the SAT scores came in the mail. I knew it was coming. It was like the 6th time I had taken it or something. And I went to a payphone and I called my brother. That's how vivid this is for me, because I remember I was like, "Hey, open it up. What did I get?" And he read me the score, and I just started crying. Like, it was just like, it was hopeless, you know. And I remember that and being embarrassed because I was crying, and you know, trying not to let somebody see me. You know, I made a valiant effort. I had made some contacts. I was a good distance runner in high school. Nothing like, I wouldn't say great, but it was good enough. I captured the attention of the cross country coach at the Naval Academy, and to this day I still don't quite know what the difference was, but I think what I've been told is that my application was sport coded, and I had other good things going. My test scores and grades weren't quite there, and then it got pushed over to a prep school option. So there's 2 prep schools for the Naval Academy. One's Naval Academy Prep School. It's in Rhode Island. And then that's where most people go. And then there's this other program. There's only like 85 people, maybe 90 that get picked, where it's either a civilian or a military boarding school. It has to be one of the schools the program picks. So there's like 90 schools across the country, and I got a letter saying I didn't get in, but I got offered an opportunity to do that program.
So you applied to the Naval Academy despite your test scores. You took the ACT at least like 5 times, it seems. Yep. But before you apply.
So everybody who applies has to get interviewed in person by someone that they call a blue and gold officer, and that was my junior year of high school. And that's important to the point of Elia's story here, that the failure, the setbacks. So this gentleman shows up at my house. My parents are there. He interviews me. I'm nervous for it. I know it's important because they're going to send a report to the admissions board. And it's kind of nice. You know, the school says, "Hey, you can only learn so much about somebody through an essay or on paper. We actually want to put another human in front of this young man or woman and learn more about them." So I appreciated the opportunity, had the interview, thought it went fantastic as I was going through, because I remember it And then I remember very well his kind of closing comments to me, which were, Adam, I've really enjoyed meeting you. You know, you've done some great things here. You're a great young man. You know, the straw man setup, right? It's like, there's a but. And there was. And he said, I hate to see somebody like you, who's working so hard, waste their time applying to a service academy that you're likely never to be accepted to. Your grades are not high enough. Your test scores are not high enough. And in that way, you know, you want to hate the guy, but it was coming from a sincere place. He didn't want me to waste my time.
Did you believe you were going to get in prior to him coming, or during the interview? But then during the interview, you thought...
So no, I didn't necessarily think it was going well. What I thought was there wasn't much juice left for me to do any better than I was doing. That the only way I could do better was have another day to grow a little bit more, but that I was giving my best every day. And hearing that, you know, psychologically makes the whole value proposition of what I had embarked on earlier that much harder if you put stock in what that guy has to say, and I did. And that really stung. I was sick to my stomach. It was clearly a setback, as you can imagine. And I recall asking myself the question, because it's your junior year. I mean, I have good friends. I had a social life. I was clearly spending a lot more time trying to do things that otherwise I wouldn't do, like a prep SAT class. That's not fun. As I had that same question again that I asked myself freshman year. I said, okay, well, he's not the final decider. It's input. It's a perspective. It's obviously one that matters more than other people. However, the game's not over, and you're really in the same place you were your freshman year. You know, you've only lied to yourself this far along that you'd even have a chance. You're excited that you're working hard, but like, you know what the numbers are, you know, and he just read them back to you essentially. So the same deal. Maybe you can do better between now and your senior year. Maybe you can just eke in there and, you know, be the walk-off home run in the bottom of the ninth. That rarely happens, but sometimes it does. Because, again, the worst-case scenario is you've only bettered yourself in other places in your life. So that is how I justified the continuation of the pursuit there.
With a heavy heart, or you...
With a heavy heart initially. I mean, there's, you know, that mourning process for everybody after a setback. So I think that was part of the learning process here for me, is that I've had enough serious setbacks from the emotional side of mourning whatever you didn't get that you wanted and getting more comfortable with that mourning process. Meaning, yeah, I felt sick to my stomach for a week and like I was an idiot, just to an extent, wasting my time and living in a fantasy world and not being grounded in reality bothered me. But again, I just said, you know, I'm not hurting anybody. I'm allowed to do this. I'm allowed to go for it. You know, screw the odds. You know, we'll see how it plays out.
So junior year, when do you apply you apply to the Naval Academy, right?
So yeah, I mean, you start applying spring semester junior year, and then, you know, you start getting feedback your senior year, and that's when I got the same day I got the letter that I was not accepted out of high school. I also got the letter that I was admitted to the program for a prep school, which was a challenge in its own right, not to be like too prolonged on that, but essentially, unlike the Naval Academy Prep School, the foundation program is a situation where you're paying to go to this private boarding school. And because I was sport coded, the cross-country coach basically narrowed it down to 3 schools. They were all on the East Coast, so I chose one. Had an indoor track, which was foreign to me, coming from Texas. Why would you need that? And that was it. And I talked to my parents about it. You know, they had to come out of pocket if I were going to go there. It's not what they wanted for me. I did get accepted at schools in Texas, and that was good. So I had good options. And ultimately, my parents asked, what do you want to do? And I said I wanted to go to the boarding school and reapply to the Naval Academy. And, I kind of had to pick their jaws up off the table. Like, they're like, seriously? You want to go to high school for another year instead of And I said, you're asking me, then that's my answer. And to their credit, I think that's maybe a line in the sand for parents is, do you want what you want for your children, or do you want what your children want for themselves? So I give my parents tremendous credit, because at that point, they supported me. So it's kind of learning the difference between what people say and what people do. My parents supported the decision for me to go to the place that I wanted to go, and I went to that boarding school for a year, matured. It was like an hour and a half outside of New York City. Got to see New York City on a couple of weekends, and just a whole different culture being on the East Coast than growing up in Dallas, Texas, and that was helpful. Got another year to get a little stronger, reinforce my academics, and then the following year, go to the Naval Academy as a freshman. I reapplied, and I was accepted that year. There weren't really major setbacks at the Naval Academy. There were, micro setbacks, which aren't noteworthy to talk about, other than people could probably imagine what they are. I think the bigger story there was working through your original question a long time ago when you said, why'd you want to become a SEAL? Is going through, again, that mental calculus of, okay, everybody's going to serve who graduates. At the Naval Academy, at a basic sense, you can drive a ship, you can drive a submarine. And then there was like some of these fringe kind of smaller communities of which the Navy SEALs were a part of. I was familiar with it, and I had considered it, but I was like, oh, that's a joke. You never shot a gun until I got to plebe summer. My parents didn't really want me to play with fireworks growing up. There were no knives in the house other than what was in the kitchen. I kind of didn't allow myself to even consider it, right? I'm a cross-country runner. I'm this wiry, skinny Jewish kid. And because I thought I wasn't the guy, I wasn't the build, I wasn't the culture, I didn't grow up hunting, that I shouldn't even consider it. And then I go, wait a second. This sounds familiar. Like, wasn't this a very similar sentiment you had when you grabbed the Naval Academy catalog, and come to find out it had, pseudo Ivy League standards that you weren't a part of? And how did you respond to that? So what's the difference here? If anything, the difference is so much easier at the Naval Academy, because to your point before about having a backup plan, I had plenty of backup plans at the Naval Academy. Everybody gets to do something. And so I said, this is silly. You should go for it.
Well, in the back of my mind, I would think, okay, what an embarrassment. If I didn't make it through BUDS or anything like that, I would say to myself, why did you even try?
It's a very good point. And it's one that I considered, but there was a filter on that point, because they only picked at the time 16 individuals from my class at the Naval Academy to do it, and a lot more than 16 wanted it. So there was a faith in the system that they would vet the people who were going to get through it. Obviously not entirely accurate, but that did give me the confidence of saying, look, I'm not necessarily just volunteering without any proper vetting that I belong there. People that have been there, that know that space, are going to thoroughly vet me. And if they say no, okay, I'll go be, in the Marine Corps.
Wait, not anyone can just apply to be a Navy SEAL? Those other people that didn't get in, they couldn't apply?
They could apply, and there were 16 spots. They call it the needs of the Navy, right? So every community in the Navy has a certain amount of spots. There are only so many ships, there are only so many submarines, there are only so many United States Marine Corps officers. So there's all this, personnel manpower math that is baked into, go to any company. I mean, how many engineers does General Motors have?
These are 16 officer spots. Right, exactly. You couldn't just come in as like a regular Joe.
Well, you could, but you'd have to walk away from the Naval Academy, and then you got to do that before you've been there for 2 years, because they won't let you walk away after 2 years without owing. Well, so I guess you could. And ironically, there was a guy in my class that did that. He wanted it. He didn't get it. He walked away. You owe enlisted time. He enlisted and got there as a enlisted sailor and made it through the program. Became a sniper. So yeah, so to your point, yeah, you could do that.
Sorry, I shouldn't say regular guy, but yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
You applied and then they picked you, or did they come tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, you should do that?
Oh no, that part's voluntary.
Okay.
So they'll allow anybody to apply. So my class had, I think, by our senior year, I think the number was around 100, maybe just shy of 100. But ironically, at the beginning, I think, maybe half the guys wanted it. So the number dwindles as it gets more real. You see less and less people in the pool and on the pull-up bar training for it. But you do see the same people who are training for it, and those are the people that you kind of build a bond with. There's a mutual appreciation. And you brought up a great point about the embarrassment of not getting through. Like, they only select you for the opportunity to go. They don't give you a special badge that makes it any easier. That it was really sad when you get picked and somebody else didn't, that in your mind you're thinking, man, that guy's better than I am.
Johnny America, no? I'm sure there are a lot of Johnny Americas in the pool.
There were. So yeah, that was, I think to this day, that was probably I don't even know what the word is, like, not humbling. It was like the biggest honor I've ever had was being picked because of so many good guys that were going for it.
Yeah, they have this thing, guys who get to Harvard University, and they immediately say, I don't belong here.
Correct. Yep. I was rattled. I remember that, thinking maybe I made a mistake here. It's like, I fooled them, like, they picked me. What? And so, yeah, I remember being rattled. I remember being scared. And ultimately, I remember thinking, it's what you want. You put in the work. You earned a chance. You haven't earned it. Like, that's in front of you. And that, was scary, knowing the stories about the process. But that was it.
Were you coming in with confidence? Or no? It seems...
I was coming in level-headed. I remember that I had pretty simple ground rules mentally for going into SEAL training. It was, under no circumstances will you quit. You may not make it, but it's not because you're going to quit. And expect the unexpected. You're not allowed to be surprised. Everything should be a surprise to you. All you focus on is succeeding and getting through.
Now, if you get injured, you're out, right?
Depending on the injury, like, a lot of times know that they can, it's called roll you back. So you allow time for the injury to heal, and then you roll back in with a class that's behind you.
Okay, so not the same class. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and you have to start over again.
There's milestones within the process. Not a lot. I mean, there's 3 phases in BUDS, and essentially each phase is a milestone. So if you don't make it through a phase, you'll get rolled into the beginning of that phase. The only caveat to that is the Hell Week, which is the 4th week of first phase, and so there's that's a milestone too. So there's beginning of first phase, beginning of Hell Week, 2nd phase, and 3rd phase.
So you get in for training, BUDS, right?
Get in for training, BUDS. I graduate the Naval Academy, like, very happy day. I'm happily married. So my happiest day is when I got married, but I remember throwing my cap in the air on May 25th, 2001. I was pretty happy. I was like, I am done with this place. It's been great, and I'm ready to be done. But yeah, SEAL training, a couple months later, I classed up beginning of October. And our Hell Week it actually went over Halloween, called it a Halloween Hell Week. Again, 2001, so September 11th had just happened, several weeks prior.
Several weeks prior to you starting BUDS.
September. We were in what's called INDOC, so it's kind of an indoctrination phase before you officially start first phase. So, but yeah. So it was very, serious.
That must have fired up a bunch of guys. A larger graduating class than usual, maybe.
If anything, I think it was helpful to the students because, we're all patriots. We're there for a reason, whether the guys got through or not. I mean, you came to fight people that were evil in the world, and clearly evil, had come to American soil like it never has before. And it kind of emboldened our resolve. I mean, I don't think I was any different than the other guys. It's like, this is why I'm here. Like, that can't happen anymore. And I want to be a part of the force that, keeps it from happening. I hope. At the time.
You think, so everyone has the same mindset coming in?
I'm there's exceptions to every rule, right? But from a basic patriotic standpoint, I'm not going to say that event made it any harder. I think that just emboldened the seriousness of what we had signed up for and why we were there. It definitely leveled the instructors that their charge was even greater as it relates to what the future was to be predicted for special operations, and that they were responsible to train us, that they better put out a good product. So I think everybody was on their A game. I don't want to say they were more selective because that kind of insults the program pre 9/11. I just think, the natural tendency in humans is complacency, and it's less so in special operations, but it doesn't mean it's not there. That was a wake-up call that, there's no room not to be as tight as possible because we're going to war. So when I came into Hell Week, my class, we started with 150 students, and Hell Week was 3 weeks later. We had already lost a third of our class before we started Hell Week, so we started with 100. We finished Hell Week. There were 36 of us standing on the beach. And so, it's like a 6-month program. So a month into it, you go from 150 to 36. And then it's kind of to your point about being selective, there's nowhere to hide, right?
I just have to go on. I know people talk about this all the time, but what separates the guy who's going to make it through Hell Week and not make it through Hell Week? Everyone, I'm assuming, is saying, I'm not going to ring the bell.
I would think that they would.
Can you explain what makes it so difficult besides being so cold?
It's a working theory because there's a lot to this. I'm not a psychologist, but my working theory is from personal experience, having my low point. You talk to some guys, they're like, yeah, I never even considered quitting. And I believe them. I wasn't one of those guys. I never considered quitting outside of Hell Week, but I got to my lowest point, my lowest of low, in Hell Week. It's the second night. The instructors, may have singled out some people, and despite my massive frame, maybe my, skinny arms, the fact that I was an officer, my last name's Weiner, that's easily mispronounced Weiner, might have made it more fun to, pay close attention. And they were really getting on me, and you just get so beat down physically that your mental discipline of knowing better and allowing somebody to get into your head, can get conflated. And they successfully had, penetrated to an extent into my mindset, and that's why I say, that was my lowest point. Because basically their line was, you're weak, why are you here, you don't belong. And when you hear that from guys who are already part of the tribe, you have to have the intellectual honesty to ask yourself, well, what the hell do I know about their tribe? If they don't want me, why would I be here?
And you felt like they were talking to you, not at you.
Yeah, no, it was definitely towards me. There was no confusion on that. Yeah, and they go through the whole class, right? And it's not like I was the only one. But clearly I was the one at a certain point, and then they kind of leave you and then revisit it. When you're beat down and then that starts to settle into your head, you're just like, this is asinine. There's a hot shower waiting for you. This is a volunteer program. You're just one ring away from a Domino's pizza and a warm shower. End this nonsense. Because guys were quitting. I was seeing guys quit around me. I was seeing strong guys. You mentioned the Johnny America or whatever. Guys you never would assume would quit. Were quitting. Why? And they actually were quitting during a drill, I remember, which was easier relative to the other ones. We're doing whistle drills, and it's just like you're low crawling through soft sand. It's not pleasant, but it's better than sitting in the surf or being under one of those logs. And I think it's because, like, they were able to think more, you know? It was easy enough that they really started to think. You didn't have time almost to think in the other drills. You just had to survive. All of your mental energy went to survival. And so I say that because I know for me that's what I was doing, and I was thinking, you know what, tap this guy's boot and then just stand up and go ring the bell. Because guys in front of you are doing it. Boy, isn't it easier when other people are doing it. You just be another sheep and just follow in line. But I didn't. I hung on. And to answer your question, I think what happens is people get in front of themselves. That nobody likes to pursue something where they don't know where the road ends. You know, I use the metaphor, if your friend shows up at your house, even if it's your friend, and they honk the horn, they're like, hey man, hop on in, let's go. And you're like, oh cool, where are we going? They're like, no, just hop in. No, where are we going? I'm not telling you. That's the feeling you have in Hell Week. Your body's never been there before. You're not even halfway through. There's no, like, how the heck am I going to get through 3 more nights? You know, there's something to be said about cutting your losses early, you know? And I think that's the difference.
You know when Hell Week is going to end. Hell Week, right? Is it only a week?
Yeah, it's 5 days. Yeah, you know it, but what you don't know is your body's ability to survive it, because it's groundbreaking.
You literally think you're going to die?
You don't think you're going to die. You just don't. You can't fathom feeling the way you feel for 3 more days. And I get, my point is, there's a difference between working that out mentally and ignoring it mentally and putting all of your focus on what's right in front of you. And your question was, what's the difference between the guys that get through and the guys that don't? And my working theory is it's the mental discipline of ignoring that dark, dangerous place where your mind naturally goes, which is what's out in front of me, and not having the ability to answer that question and pursuing with all of your might.
2 things. One is, did you feel that you had an obligation to encourage guys because you were an officer? And number 2, were there other people that were encouraging you?
Yes, I felt an obligation as an officer. That's why I was even in a darker place, because it wasn't enough for me just to survive. I was supposed to be a leader. I felt like I was surviving. I felt like I was failing as a leader. That there was room for me to do better. And to the point of your second question, it's easy to know where you're falling short of the mark when you see other guys doing it better than you. There were other officers that were doing a better job leading than me. And it's rattling. Yeah. It's like, man, I'm not cutting it. And thus the instructors are keying in on that, right? And so basically that was my low point, and I they were in my face making, you know, a relatively valid argument to me of my performance or lack thereof. And I just remember thinking, you know, if they don't want me, that's fair. But I owe it to myself to make that decision when I complete this program, not right now. I'm not going to make that call right now. I'm not going to break my own integrity. I had a rule. I refuse to quit. I don't have to be a SEAL, but I make that call when this is over after I've completed it. And I don't know if there's been another time in my life where it was just like it went from complete blackness to total light in a half a second. And I started to raise my voice. It was basically like I was dying and all of a sudden I was alive. It's like one of those Nintendo games where you get like a nitro. You know, yeah. Super Mario got the mushroom and went from the little guy to the big guy. I just remember just throwing a look at the instructors and just kind of saying some smart-ass comment and just staring daggers through their skull. And they basically were like, whoa, what just happened here? And there was just kind of this silent acknowledgement on their part, like, okay, we're good, we can move on. And that was it.
Wow. And then you got through it.
Yep.
And then
the rest was easy.
Yeah. Well, you and I have spoken about, you know, there are people who maybe didn't make it through Hell Week or Buds, or didn't even make it become a SEAL, but they would have been great SEALs. I think that's
absolutely. What I mean by that is there's a tactical proficiency that it's not superficial in nature, but it's very physical in nature. So I guess the way I like to describe it is the difference between hard skills and soft skills. So hard skills, are devoid of one's character, I'll say, to make it clear. And soft skills are things that have a lot to do with your character and beyond. But soft skills I would define as loyalty, selflessness, work ethic, discipline, integrity. Hard skills is speed, strength, tactical proficiency, shooting. And it is a challenge for different organizations to walk the balance between picking the right folks of soft skill versus hard skill. I think the reason why the SEAL community is as strong as it is because they've done well at striking a balance. Meaning there's guys that don't make it through the program that have better hard skills than others. But the glue of the community, in my opinion, is the soft skill. That's what maintains the level of excellence. A professional is someone who gets up every day and improves on where they were yesterday. Like the corny cliche for SEALs is the only easy day was yesterday. And it means something in a very real way. We're insatiable. We're never satisfied. It can always be done better. And when you surround yourself with people that all think that way, you're not fighting any soft skill, any culture that pushes back on excellence. It's adopted, and even more powerful than that is when the complacency creeps in. Maybe somebody gets older or someone has a bad day. It is aggressively policed out. You don't need the leadership to police it out. It's policed by your peers. And it's very rare in this world to have that kind of a culture. But I think it is the soft skill that is the glue of the culture, and because of that, there is a line of good enough on the hard skill that the program, filters accordingly.
Very powerful lessons in leadership, I think. Creating a culture of insatiability. And the only easy day was yesterday.
It's just hard in 2020 because some of the self-policing mechanisms that take place in the platoon space probably aren't as accepted in the vehicle tech center in Warren at General Motors, let's say, for example.
Okay, that's it. You made it. You pick which team number you want to be?
It's a wish list. So again, the needs of the Navy, rule of the day. Like my story, I wanted to stay where I was at in San Diego, and there's East Coast SEAL teams in Virginia Beach. There's West Coast in San Diego. And then there's kind of this like fringe SEAL delivery vehicle team out in Hawaii.
So you picked based on weather?
Well, I wanted to be in San Diego, and the weather in Southern California, I'll say, is pretty nice. So that helped. But I did not want to go out to Hawaii. It had nothing to do with Hawaii. I didn't want to dive that much. But I got picked to go there. And I was kind of a bummer. I was in third phase, and it was towards the end, so there's kind of a fun night right towards the end when we're all out on San Clemente Island. At least when I was going through, this is how they did it. The instructors read out your set of orders where everybody was going, and I was, it's like, seriously? I don't want to be bummed. And I was a bit disappointed because I didn't want to do all the diving, but it's, hey, you're going to your SEAL team. So to answer your question, off you go. And then depending on kind of the lineup of guys, there's, there can be a waiting list, I'll say, to get rostered onto a platoon. I had a bit of a wait where I showed up at SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 1. There were some officers in front of me. And that's it. I served. I deployed with some platoons before I got on as an officer just to have some learning experiences. I got to be kind of a ride along, if you will. I didn't get to operate with them. I was just kind of a helping hand to educate myself, and that was a pretty sweet deal. But then, I got onto my first platoon, and off you go. I mean, it's real. It's for us anyways, it was like a 1.5 year cycle to train for a 6-month window of deployment. And on my very first platoon, we got a huge mission, came down from very high up, and it had never been done before, and it was very sensitive. It's like,
so it's a 1.5 years from when you graduate the SEAL program until you actually go on a mission.
Well, it was actually longer than that, because basic underwater demolition SEAL school, or BUDS, like where Hell Week took place in the 3 phases, that's like 6 months. After that, you have advanced training. That's at least another 6 months. It's actually longer than that. And then you show up to your SEAL team. So I'd even bore you through all of our advanced training. And there is some attrition that takes place in advanced training, not much.
Yep, guys will drop out at that point.
They're not quitting. They're removed.
Wow.
For hard skill, usually it's a proficiency thing, sometimes soft skill. But yeah, you get to your SEAL team, and then most guys do get on platoons usually pretty quickly. It was exceptional that I had to wait for as long as I did. They just had too many officers, which bugged me, because I was like, why did they give me orders out here if there are enough people? But eventually I got on that platoon, and yeah, we had a long workup before that deployment window, but we had a very specific mission, so we did all the normal things that SEALs do. You just had less time to do it because you had to learn the undersea mission, and then in our case we had a very specific mission we were training to, so you spend time doing that, and it was amazing. It was an amazing experience, and I know this is all about setbacks and failures, and in hindsight, it's not something that I was able to grasp when I was in it, but the pain that I feel now and looking back on that time was like living my dream and not enjoying it. And I don't mean from a fun perspective. There's a difference between, doing meaningful things that are purpose-driven and being present versus just kind of being at a party and, you're a free spirit, whatever. This had more to do with, I was such a nervous Nancy. I was so hard on myself. Of course you're gonna fail. You're gonna trip. You're on your first platoon. Just let it go. You're there already. It was kind of like there were all these filters along the way. But it's what it is. But that was the failure. That there's got to be a healthy balance between holding yourself to that high standard and having a buffer of using the mistakes to learn on without kind of the self-punishment. I was making a lot of mistakes on my first platoon, both hard and soft skill, and just getting beat up and just not being in a great place. I was doing okay in hindsight, that's why I'm saying, but that to me, it's not a very acute lesson learned, but just to offer that maybe it's just part of being institutionalized and feeling like you're a bubble guy for so long, is to allow yourself to be accepted once you're actually there. I don't fault myself for the way I approached everything leading up to the platoon, but I would assign fault to my mindset being on that first platoon, because there was less acceptance that I belonged in my own head, and I think that has a massive effect on your performance and your mindset. I know it now, right? I didn't know it. I didn't understand what I was doing to myself back then, but I can see it now.
So once you even became in charge of a platoon, you felt that I'm not worthy for this? It started all over again? I don't belong here?
So fair question. I was not in charge of that platoon. I was an officer on the platoon, and I backed up the platoon commander. And depending on how we got organized, I might have been in charge, but I was not in charge of that platoon.
I'm sure guys were looking to you to lead, or maybe not.
Yeah. I mean,
Did you feel like you had to be a leader?
I did, and I felt like I was a leader, especially on the soft skill piece. To a lot of the guys on the platoon, they would come to me with personal issues and genuinely ask my opinion on things. So it was really an enriching experience of building a family. That's what I loved about the SEAL teams. I just like smaller groups, kind of like get exhausted in big groups. So I liked the idea of a dozen or 15 guys that, you live together, you work together, you train together, you deploy together for 2 years. And yeah, I mean, I did lead them, and I have great relationships with those guys and friends with a handful of them to this day. And I led them tactically, and there was mutual respect there. So, I mean, I'm no storied leader in the SEAL community by any means, but I also have the wherewithal not to knock, my delivery when it counted. Certainly on mission. We did some good stuff, and it had never been done before, and we did it well. So I was part of that. It didn't come without its bumps and bruises, and there's a lot of funny stories that I'm sure I'm a part of where, aren't casting me in the best light, but that's just part of the process. So really the process gets the credit. My credit is just staying with it, and then it worked itself out when it needed to.
Are there any missions that you didn't accomplish? And what happens? And if so, what happens?
No, for us, I mean, there was one huge mission that we went on. We absolutely accomplished it. It was awesome. And after that,
The country does not exist
anymore. We weren't able to follow up. We were supposed to augment one of the troops from SEAL Team 3 in Iraq, but it was 2006. Ramadi was blowing up, and they, for various, I'll say, political reasons or whatever, they kind of stopped guys coming in. So the plan was after our tasking, we were going to augment. We didn't, and we ended up doing some exercises with some allied partners around the Pacific, which didn't suck, honestly, but orders are orders.
Mm-hmm. What's the story that sticks out?
The story that sticks out from a failure is, I become a platoon commander after that first platoon. I stay at that same team, SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 1, and there's a very precise incident of failure of leadership on my part, which is really painful. So the story is, we're going through that workup, right? A year and a half, 18 months, if you will, and one of the one of the blocks of training is land warfare, and especially at our team, you had to get in the water. So we went out to San Clemente Island. It's a training. It's an island off of San Diego, Los Angeles. And so we finished our training there, and we had a C-130. Our plane was going to take us back to Hawaii, but the plane wasn't going to show up for 2.5 more days. So we kind of had a little bit of dead time to just kind of clean up our gear, recover a little bit. And the guys noticed or whatever that Catalina Island, which is kind of this little resort getaway island off the coast of Los Angeles, was a very doable boat ride, whaler boat ride from where we were at. So they had the phenomenally sound idea to ask their platoon commander, hey, sir, if we get everything all buttoned up and, this afternoon, and can we go to Catalina Island, blow off some steam, we'll come back, be in time for our bird, work hard, play hard. So I go, I sit down, I just want to be quiet, kind of stressed. It's been 6 weeks of hard training. I'm in charge, I had some successes, I had some failures, I'm exhausted. Have a drink, have 2 drinks. And unlike in other communities in the Navy, there's a closeness, obviously, between the officers and enlisted. It's just different. I'm not going to say it's right or wrong. It's just different.
You're in a bar? Where are you?
Yeah, we were in a bar. And the guys are spread out. I just basically said when we got off the boat, it's big boy rules. I trust these guys.
Spread out over the island?
Yeah. I was just like, all right, guys, muster is back here on the pier, whatever it was, 10:30 a.m. Stick together, don't stick together, but you can't be alone. You have to at least be with somebody. Swim buddy rules is what we called it. And a lot of drinking took place. I was a part of it. As I say, I had one too many l'chaims. And then next thing I know, there's a fight. It's late. It's at some club. People are dancing or whatever. And then there's a fight that breaks out. And the bouncers are getting involved, and my platoon's involved, and some bouncers got beat up. And the little police station on Catalina Island ended up rounding up 2 of my guys. And so I recall sitting in the Catalina police station talking to the police officers that 2 of the guys they'd taken into custody were my guys and who we were, showed them my ID, explained that we had a plane to catch, in a day and a half or whatever, needed to get out of there. Got out of there.
Any respect from them, like that? Oh, these are SEALs. We'll cut you guys a break, or
Yeah, there was respect. I mean, there was also respect for the law, and if any things were documented, and they had good accountability of us. So there was a police report that was written up, names were named, and then some anonymous were left anonymous, like they didn't know who the people were.
Anonymous, like they just didn't say their name, or they didn't have any ID on them?
They didn't know. So they had eyewitnesses, but they weren't able to place the person to the name to the person in the storied account. So we get back to the command. It's a mess. I know it's a mess. I'm in trouble. I'm in charge. It was my decision to go. Got a police report. Commanding officer, command master chief for trying to figure out what they're going to do for discipline. In this police report starts to float around the command. So like the other platoons have it, and there's really no sympathy there. It's just a bunch of laughing and pointing. Somebody else is in trouble and it's not them, so it's funny. The police report is quite an interesting read, and the short of it was there was one of the anonymous, like they didn't know the name, was some sort of instigator on the dance floor, and one of the other people there, not part of the platoon, didn't like it, and there were some choice words being traded, and then punches were thrown. And my assistant platoon commander, just like I was in the previous platoon, pulls me aside after a couple of days of kind of walking around, figuring out what's going to go on, and kind of being told to stand by the command leadership. Says, "Hey Adam, do you realize that you are the anonymous in that police report, that you're that instigator?" And there's one other occasion in my life when I remember going from being a normal temperature to immediately sweating, like beads of sweat coming out of my forehead. That was one of them.
I mean, you don't remember anything from this incident?
I drank too much that, to this day, I only know what police report said and what my guys tell me. So, I'm not proud of it, but, truth is truth. So I can have my intellectual honesty and share the truth, or I could, give you some story that sounds nice that nobody's going to learn from. So that's what I did, and it was wrong. And, I'm a lightweight to some extent, I guess. I immediately walked over to my commanding officer's office. I knocked on the door, explained what was going on. I explained why the information was just coming to him now from me, that I blacked out. I had zero recollection to that moment. The only reason I know about it is because somebody finally told me. And basically, the platoon was covering for me. The platoon was protecting me in the bar, and then they were covering for me there. Yeah, I mean, there wasn't a lot of thought. It was, I have nothing at this point. I'm going to be fired. I deserve to be fired. But it's just that, people say it's it's a great story. It's inspiring as it relates to integrity. It was kind of that's all I have. I know it now. I'll keep my integrity. I'm not going to lose that. I'm not going to try to keep it a secret or something, because then I won't get fired and I'll stay on the platoon that I worked so hard to get on. That's not real winning in my book. So I kept my integrity. I went to the commanding officer. He was very upset. I could see it. He was just beside himself. He wasn't short of words. He just kind of offered up a lot of them loudly all at once, and then said, "Your fate's yet to be determined." And I basically kind of sat at home and watched, or not watched, but I'd sat in speeches. I'd heard people talk about their experiences where they'd done these things and worked so hard, and they make this one mistake, and then the whole thing is ruined. And I was like, wow, man, that's what I just did. I'm going to get fired. It's over. And it's well.
What does fired mean?
Take away your trident. You're off the platoon. You're no longer a SEAL. Send you back to the Navy. They'll do something else with you. I'd seen it happen to other guys.
You go back to the Navy, then you can have like a court martial, or
No, I didn't commit any crimes. I don't think. It was more about the community does not have a need for me anymore. I still have service I owe to the Navy, so they'll put me in some capacity to squeeze the juice out of me for the time that I owe to the Navy, and then move on with life. And it's a failure. So that's what I thought. But as it turns out, the commanding officer ended up keeping me. And he basically said, you don't have any more chips. One more mistake, you're done. He goes, and I don't want you walking on eggshells. He's like, I made this decision thoughtfully. I know who you are. And that's it. Learn from it. Move forward.
I mean, is he able to build you back up from that? How are you not able to not walk on eggshells? Confidence? You have confidence?
But yeah, basically what he was saying is like, you don't need to walk on eggshells. You just don't need to be an idiot. I'm not looking to fire you. But if you mess up again, there's no room here. And I knew that. And then, I changed. It was a lot of maturity that happened overnight. My platoon didn't like it, I wasn't a come-along guy as much as I used to be, and that's just being conservative. There's a way to do it, and clearly I lacked the maturity to pull it off, and I wasn't about to lose, that meaningful role that at that point I felt very blessed to have after the fact. I just kind of had to tighten it up, and it was a massive failure of maturity.
It's a very different kind of failure.
People could say, like, well, that's not fair, it's just drinking or whatever. No, it's about the maturity of putting yourself in the right environment and having the discipline to pay attention to what your limits are. That's a bad example as a leader, to think it's okay to take that kind of a risk when you're in charge. There's room maybe for some of the other guys to do it as long as somebody is at the helm, coherent, and the guys were counting on me and I let them down, and maybe they don't even see that or necessarily understand it, but once somebody has the charge of leadership, I think they get it more, that there's something much bigger at stake. So it's not about the one isolated incident as much as the trend. There were a lot of lines. There's the timeline of that whole incident. I had so many opportunities to make a different decision to keep myself and or the platoon out of trouble. And I'm accountable for those.
You knew that? You knew, like, I shouldn't be doing this? Did that ever cross your mind?
Yeah, how about just saying, no, we're not going to do that?
Yeah, but were you saying to yourself, in other words, were you saying to yourself, I shouldn't be doing this? At any point, did that ever cross your mind?
No. And that's the failure of maturity, is to think that, like, you can just, take a breath because you're not in training. You're still in charge. That's what leadership is. That's what being mature is. Someone's given you the charge of, even though you're not in the middle of a drill, you are in charge. So everything, you're on the clock. You're paid all the time. It's 24/7. And it's a beautiful experience. There's a right way to do it, and there's a wrong way to do it. And that was wrong.
I don't know how to build a culture. I'm sure you were just trying to build a culture in the platoon to become, everyone should be a stronger unit. Was that your mindset? Is that constantly something that's on your mind? It is, but it's very unique to the individual. What I was going to say is I think it's the difference between the science that's involved with leadership and the art that's involved with it. And the art of it is subjective to the individual that's carrying out their unique style. This is this complexity in life of the DNA that we have and what our ability is to pull something off against the next guy. And what I'm saying there is I hear what you're saying about the culture of the platoon, and you're kind of making some like objective defense on my part that the intention behind it was a good one, had served a purpose that further connected the platoon, and that's fair. And yes, like in my head it was, hey, we work hard, we play hard, we earned it, we're done with our work, we're allowed to go do this now. But like
maybe the next officer could have done that and it would have been fine, but clearly it wasn't for me. So it's very unique to the individual. This is not a cookie cutter thing where it's telling the next platoon commander that's in San Clemente he can't go to Catalina and drink, because some of them can. This is about, knowing yourself and kind of where your limits are, and that's why I say it's an art, because it's different for different people. But what's not an art is the science of accountability. And I hate hearing this millennial generation tell me about how hard they tried. Show me what you do. What are the results? It's not that I don't care about your intent and your effort, but it has to be married up with the truth of what affects other people on planet Earth, which are results. And leaders need to understand that. So that's kind of my point there, Like, it's easy for me to find people to sympathize with me if I want to do that and just give up my intellectual honesty on the whole conversation. If I do that, then I'm not learning from it. And not to, take off on a tangent about the Jewish trait of learning from our mistakes and forgiving and saying I'm sorry, like we're supposed to do after every Yom Kippur. But I think that is so critical to our Judaism, which is saying, I did this, I was wrong, I know I was wrong, I'm going to learn from it and continue to live my life. But never go back and try to dress it up as some sort of, well, let me explain to you in some lawyerish way why, I can justify it.
What does it mean to lead a Navy SEAL team? I mean, aren't these guys independent? Can't they? Everyone knows the objective. Everyone knows what their job is.
So the context of a SEAL platoon naturally offers a tremendous amount of autonomy to each individual with the trust that you place in them. As they're kind of going back to your point about, hey, each is their own guy, they're accountable for themselves, blah, blah, blah. But as it relates to the tone that you set as a leader, to the culture that you deem acceptable within the platoon as the leader of the platoon, that they're gonna guide off that. Are they gonna follow it exactly? Unlikely. But you're kind of setting up goalposts, right? You're creating boundaries within a culture. And so that I can appreciate that this is not the clearest point. Maybe there's a better way for me to say it, but that is the charge of a leader on a SEAL platoon, is to maintain the respective boundaries on the culture and knowing that animal that's inside of all of us, and then certainly inside of a SEAL platoon, is to have the maturity and discipline to guard against it when it could take people out of the fight. And not necessarily assume that each individual on the platoon is very aware of that, but as a leader that you strike a balance to ensure the longevity of the platoon for what matters the most, which is their safety in the mission, not having a good time. So I guess I was just speaking to the culture. I was just speaking to everything leading up to the mission. Yeah, so I would say that, the best leaders, and I think even not the best leaders, because I wouldn't necessarily put myself in that category, but both of my platoons performed very well on deployment, successful missions across the board. Meaning, once you get to the mission, all the work's done. Everyone's just executing their job. If you're a leader, your job tactically is to, ensure that the requirements are being met of the mission and everyone's doing their job. That's your job. And you may also have a job, if you're a navigator or whatever. But, on mission, it's not like there's some magical call that you're making. You're just doing your job. I mean, that's the job. Just the chief's got a job. All the guys are leaders within their own squads. So I think that the higher charge of the leader isn't necessarily on the mission, but everything leading up to the mission. And when the mission's executed, everyone's just like playing their role.
This is a little bit of a pivot, but why do you think the suicide rate is just outrageous?
So I didn't read the book, but I had good friends that have read the book. I forget the name of that pasture in San Diego. A purpose-driven? Something.
A purpose-driven life. Yeah. What on earth am I here for?
The suicide issue is speaking from personal experience. So professionally speaking, I define myself by wearing the uniform and being a patriot. So how, when I hang up the uniform, am I going to replicate that? And the answer is you're not. Not to the extent, right? You can try. You can do things that are nice, and people will appreciate that. But to the impact at the level that a lot of people were at, I think what happens is if you don't have a community around you supporting you, the mind has a sad, natural ability to go to a dark place quickly. There's no more purpose. Nobody's around you. No family, no spouse, no siblings, no friends. And your dignity gets removed in a sense because you feel like you're doing things that are beneath you. You came from a culture where there was maybe more of a mutual respect, or even if someone talked harshly to you, there was a bond and there was an understanding of the path that you had chosen. And now you're like you said, you're in this new culture where you're wearing these dress shoes, and you put on a tie, and someone's trying to sell something, and now you have to sell something to someone, or you're making a widget, and it's kind of like, seriously, you're like, what am I doing? And I don't know, I've never thankfully allowed myself to get to such a dark place, but I know that I've struggled with finding a purpose that put me at ease after I took the uniform off. And it's sad. I mean, and that's why it's like, to anybody listening, if you got any friends that are veterans, even if you're not a veteran, it's just like, don't let them be alone. Because it means the world. If somebody's in a bad place and all you do is call them and just say, hey, man, I was thinking of you. Just know that I'm here. Talk to me anytime. It doesn't mean you're going to save a life, but it could be the difference. And so, yeah, I mean, clearly I'm no psychologist. I don't know, but I do know that as the country, in my opinions, becomes so less focused on that transcendent God, religion, that without that as a foundation and without a family, I can see where people really struggle to repurpose themselves. And whatever they have, they feel like it's below what they should or could be doing, and it saddens them, and it just starts to compound on it. And because military guys and gals are people of action and real consequence, they don't just think about things, but they'll follow through. So it's like, in a really disgusting, sad, and tragic way, it's to the credit of their seriousness and follow through and how they live their lives. If they don't just think about stuff, but they'll go out and put it into action, that you have a very dangerous combination taking place of people that are willing to do that. And what happens is people get institutionalized, so they spend their life in an institution, and then when they leave that institution, they're naked. I mean, we've seen this before in literature, in fiction. Shawshank Redemption. So one of my favorite movies, right? I can't remember the name of the guy. He's got the birdies, but he gets out of jail. Why does he commit suicide? It's all he knew. He's so alone. He's so alone. So I think that psychologically speaking, it's essentially the same thing. And I don't think was it Brooks? Is that his name in the movie? It's so you put him through a classroom before he spends all those years in prison. It's too late. The momentum's taken over.
Or a lab. I don't know. A lab of some sort.
No, I mean, honestly, man, I think that's just, I think it's noble, but there's an element of human arrogance that for every problem we can come up with a solution. And at the end of the day, I think, people need to appreciate that real life is messy and momentum is powerful. And, it's not I'm not succumbing to like being accepting of it. I'm offering that we have to be careful about just creating some program or classroom and it makes us feel better that we're trying, but it makes no difference to the outcome. I don't have the answers, and I'm not an naysayer to people that are trying, and I appreciate all the efforts. I'm just trying to ground us in reality that saves lives and not tease ourselves that I can throw money in programs at something that's going to make a difference.
To end on a high note, what's something that an average Joe can take away from a SEAL commander?
That's fine. I appreciate the opportunity to share all this stuff. What I'd say is, my wife tells me all the time that I don't appreciate how other people view me, and that I just like to kind of go do my normal thing, and that they all want to hear the stories, and clearly I'm happy to share a lot of them. But the most important story for me, as it relates to the betterment of the values that I care about, is in working at becoming a better husband and father. So like the message is that you don't have to be in special operations to be exceptional. That the biggest challenge in my life, and nothing has made me greater as what I think is most important, not because of this space, because of the true characteristics that are involved. And I say that because I think it's misunderstood, because people would say, well, if I went through the training that you did, I can only imagine how I would do this and that, and how I, my character and blah, blah, blah. And I'll say, well, that's fair. It's flattering to an extent. It just hasn't been my experience. That it's ironic. Maybe that's why I walk around the way that I do, because it's just like, it was a job that I chose to do. I was lucky to do it. I was luckier to have the people around me that I had and be a part of the culture. But like the greater challenges on our individual journey in our personal lives, in our personal relationships, are paramount to that. And if you hold yourself accountable to a standard in those spaces, there's no limit to the betterment that you can bring to your lives. And stop chasing the dust. Don't go for the job. Go for it, but don't think that that's gonna be the thing that puts you over the top. At least in my opinion, on the stuff that's really important. And maybe that's just a difference of priorities. But my message is, if you're interested because it sounds like a cool story from a Navy SEAL, so be it. But the real message is like the metaphor to all the stories is they can be relatable in your experiences, whatever they are. And the point I love about your interview, even though maybe I didn't talk about the failures enough, is that how powerful they were for me, but only because I was willing to keep my integrity on a personal level, circle back to it, be honest about it, and work to make it better for the next time. There's no hope if you don't do that. You're just like a gerbil spinning a wheel. You're moving, but you're not going anywhere.